Hello there, Eric Lee here with Equity Real Estate and Elite Agent Training. I want to talk about this NAR lawsuit that this Burnett versus NAR et al. It's a lawsuit that just went down in Missouri. Most realtors have been tracking this. And after just a few hours of deliberation, the jury came back and found that the NAR and everything was guilty. Basically, collaborating for commissions and stuff. Now, personally, I think this is insane. Okay. But I don't know what's going on over in Missouri either. We're based in Utah. And so we do have agents all over the country, but my specialization is here in Utah. But I still think it's insanity from everything that I know about the real estate industry. There is no fixing of commissions or anything like that going on. Everything is negotiable. I've been doing this for 20 years, and that was one of the first things that I was taught was that everything is negotiable. So for most of my realtor friends that are going to be watching this, and I'll put a little bit out there for the public as well, just for information in case this is a talking point on the news or something that you hear about. What does this mean for realtors and for our industry? Well, first of all, the NAR has said that they're going to appeal this, so we'll see where that goes. So right now I'm kind of just sitting tight, waiting for the final decision to come down. Is there room for improvement for real estate agents? Always, just like any trade out there, there's room for improvement. And so there is opportunity here for us to be better. And I've been teaching agents I've been doing this for 20 years, but actually training agents for about 17 of those years. And I've been teaching all along how we provide exceptional value if we provide exceptional value. If you just go ahead with the minimum hours that are required by state law to get a real estate license, you don't provide very much value. You know a few laws not to break. Hopefully you can pass that along to your clients, but it's pretty limited, and we need to do better than that. Okay, nobody gets along well with the bare minimum requirements. So number one, agents, one of the things you can do is get trained, right? Do not settle for the very basics. And if you're willing to settle for that, you're not welcome in my office. We want agents that are well trained. Okay. And we offer lots of training opportunities. Most brokerages do, but you got to take advantage of those. All right. Once you have the great training, then you can start to see the real value that you can provide. And you need to do a better job of communicating that value to your clients. So I saw a post a couple of weeks ago. It just drives me nuts. An agent, been in the industry 25 years. He says, I've never signed an exclusive buyer broker agreement, and I never will. And I'm like, you're insane, buddy. Sit down with your people, go through the whole process of what it takes to buy a home, express your value, and they will sign that with you. They'll commit to you because you're communicating your true value in what you do. Without us communicating that, people think that we're Uber drivers. We drive them around to see homes. We have a magic key that gets us in all the doors. They don't understand the true value. So that's what I want to end on here is, where do we go from here? Agents, you can do better. And public, you need to know what a good agent should be doing for you. And so I want to share the top 5 things that come to mind for me. And I could make a really long list here, depending on the details that I wanted to get into it. But I've jotted down 5 quick, simple ideas of value that a buyer's agent provides. Okay, the first one is obviously negotiations. When we are in the middle of a contract and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars and it's the roof over our head, I'm talking from a member of the public's perspective. This is a question of, will we have a roof over our head? What's that roof going to look like? Or if I'm selling the home, there's high emotions because this is where I've raised my family. How much equity can I get? Things like that. Whenever you're in a very emotional position and you're in a point of negotiation, you're always the underdog. All right. Being able to stay cool and calm and just not swayed by emotion, it is going to help you. That's one of the true values that a real estate agent has. But in those terms of negotiation, typically when we think of negotiation, we're thinking, pricing and negotiating the terms of the contract. And yeah, that's there too. That's important. A good real estate agent knows the market. We have tools that can help us not only see what sold prices were, but what concessions were given. Usually, even in states where that is public knowledge, they don't see the full details. They don't see concessions that were given, etc. So having all of that information helps you be a better negotiator. But the primary thing really is having somebody that's not emotionally charged, helping to find resolutions to the challenges that you're going to be facing. So having a good negotiator representing you is very important for a buyer. All right. Now, one of the arguments that's being made is, well, can I just do all this online? Technology has caught up to where I can see homes online, I can do virtual tours online, I could fill out the paperwork online. And sure, if everything were perfect and nobody were trying to take advantage of that buyer, yeah, they could do all of that stuff, but that is not the world that we live in. All right. Sellers are going to try to get everything in their favor, and they need somebody saying, hey, their asking price isn't reflecting market value. And that needs to be an independent person, in my opinion, representing the buyer, looking out for the buyer's interests. All right, let's talk about writing the contract. So we've talked about negotiation, but when we get into the details of that, writing the contract is very important. Typically, when interviewed, and the NAR does surveys. That's the National Association of Realtors, if you're not familiar with it. They do surveys every year talking about for sale by owners, what were your biggest challenges? Always one of the top 5 challenges for a for sale by owner is filling out the contract. So legal paperwork is scary. And you might be a very intelligent person and you read through the contract and you understand all the big words and everything, but you don't understand how it plays out in real life with some of those little details. And an experienced realtor can help you with those things. So, and it goes beyond just knowing the forms, like even some simple details. For example, how I write the address could determine whether or not, when it gets into the hands of the lender, if I'm eligible for an appraisal waiver. That could save my client $500 right there, just by such a simple thing as knowing how to write the address on the contract. What about when it comes time to negotiate for repairs? How we ask for repairs, how we use that language in the contract can kill the deal. It absolutely can. And if you don't know what you're doing and you write the wrong language and it gets in front of an underwriter can take control away from you and say, you know what, we're not negotiating repairs. All of these things have to be done. And the seller's not capable of doing all of those things, where buyer and seller could have worked something out. These things happen all the time, and they happen to untrained agents, and it will definitely happen to somebody that's unrepresented as a buyer. And then, as I mentioned a little bit, all of the forms. So there are very few forms, at least here in Utah, that are prepared by the state. 90% of the forms that we use are prepared by the attorneys for the Utah Association of Realtors. And so agents that are trained in those forms are problem-solving forms. So when we meet somebody and they've got a challenge, they want to buy a home, but they still have to sell their old home, we have the forms for that, all right? And they are not public forms. These are things that are copyrighted. So a great agent knows all of the forms. They know all the tools in their toolbox that can help a buyer get through all of the hurdles that are going to be impacting their ability to buy a home. Let's talk about fraudulent scenarios. I've talked about, I just mentioned negotiating repairs. Usually when we get into a contract and there's some challenges thrown in our way. The repairs come back and, maybe it does go in front of the lender and the lender comes back and says, hey, you can't do this. The temptation that people have, and again, I've been doing this 20 years, this is real, is to hide stuff from the lender. Now that's fraud, right? So if you don't know any better, people will be actively committing fraud on a huge scale. Having a good buyer's agent involved helps them know, number one, how to avoid that fraudulent scenario in the first place. But number two, if you are in a sticky situation and thinking about doing something that is deceptive, that is considered fraudulent, a good agent knows the right way to negotiate around that without dipping into gray area or crossing the line altogether. We know good ways to solve those problems rather than resorting to fraud. All right. So that would be the number 3 thing that you would need a great agent for. Number 4 is a little practicality issue, the vendors. So I'm a buyer and I want to buy a home. If I don't have an agent representing me, then it comes time, do I even know that I can get an inspection? So my very first home that I bought, I did not know that I could hire a professional inspector. I didn't know what they would do for me. I didn't know the costs of it. All of these things were scary to me. They were intimidating. You feel kind of dumb for not knowing some of these things as an adult. Maybe you should have known them, so you don't ask the questions. This is all very human of us, and it happens to everyone. So what if I do find an inspector? What if I do think of that? And so I call an inspector, but maybe they're not a very good one because I don't know any better. I'm just going off of the phone book, right? So what about all the different vendor partners you can think of? There's lenders. Is it a good lender, or am I just going off of the phone book? Because a great lender can save you thousands of dollars. We've mentioned the inspector. At least here in Utah, almost anybody can be an inspector. Okay, there's no special training, anything like that. It's very simple to call yourself an inspector here. Do you do a good job or do you not? That can cost thousands of dollars by not having that job done well. Title companies doing their job well, attorneys, and then different tradesmen. As you get into the weeds of it, maybe there's some things need to be painted, or some contractor work needs to be done, some plumbing, some electrical, whatever. The good real estate agent can connect you with good tradespeople, and that is worth thousands of dollars on every transaction out there. And then the last thing is just problem solving. When you've got a good agent, they solve problems. So we've already mentioned, when an inspection comes back bad. Over the last few years, when we saw this insane market of 2020, 2021, there were a lot of listing agents that simply wouldn't entertain offers from an unrepresented buyer because they knew that when that buyer got their inspection back, they would not know how to effectively negotiate those repairs. They would be scared, they'd run away, they wouldn't know how to fix that problem. What about when the appraisal comes in a little bit low? Do they know how to challenge that appraisal? Do they know how to help provide the appraiser with comps? And even if they knew how to, they don't have the tools to be able to do that. So the ability to solve problems. And as I mentioned, which kind of brings us back full circle, the emotions. People get emotional with this process. Being able to solve those problems is the difference between the deal going through or the deal not going through. A great buyer's agent provides exceptional value, way more than the cost.